The little boy just wanted to finish his father's leftover cup of yogurt, but his father snatched it away. John not only scolded his son, but also sternly warned the boy. From now on, you are not to touch Dad's leftover food anymore. After hearing this, Michael's face showed clear hurt, but the little boy had no idea that his father was actually protecting him. Not long ago, John was diagnosed with terminal cancer and didn't have much longer to live. He didn't know how to tell his son. His wife had left right after Michael was born, leaving the father and son behind. John alone shouldered the responsibility of raising his child. He once thought that even without a wife, he could still give his son a happy family, but he never expected fate to play such a painful trick on him. As a child, John also had to live with others and grew up on street food because his parents passed away too early. Therefore, in the remaining less than 3 months of his life, he set 2 goals for himself. One was to find a suitable adoptive family for his son, and the other was to teach his son one last lesson: how to face death and how to say goodbye. John was a quiet window cleaner. Every day he had to climb up and down tall buildings to earn a meager salary. The glaring sunlight shining on the glass reflected the images of all kinds of people. On one side were the wealthy capitalists enjoying life. On the other were hard-working laborers like him, a single father. John tried to work hard every day just so his son could have a better life. Every day, Michael would obediently sit by the window waiting for his father to come home. The boy was very lovable and understanding. Even when he was upset, just coming home and receiving a hug from his dad would quickly make him happy again. Every night before bed, John would gently bathe and delouse his son, then sit on the bed and tell fairy tales. Only when Michael was fast asleep would he quietly open the cabinet, which was filled with all the medicines he had to take daily. Although his illness was very serious, he still didn't want his son to know because the boy was too young. He couldn't help share the burden and would only worry more. After every breakfast, he would hold his son's hand and walk him to school. Whenever he saw friends being taken to school by their mothers, Michael would habitually ask where his mom was. Father John could only tell his son that his mother had gone to a very faraway place. Seeing his son's small and lonely figure, John decided to start looking for an adoptive family. That day, he suppressed the pain from his illness to go to the adoption center. After explaining his situation, he made a single request: the new family must love Michael as their own flesh and blood. Just as he said, this was the most important decision of his life, a decision that would affect Michael's future. Not long after, John met the first family. The husband and wife were both successful people in society who loved a quiet and peaceful country life. They believed that such an environment would help a child develop both physically and mentally. Their house had a large lawn, a bright villa, and they even planned to get a puppy. That was also Michael's long-held dream. It seemed like a good choice. However, the man's words made John hesitate. He wanted Michael to transfer to a school they founded and plan the boy's life until he became an adult. In his words, he kept repeating the phrase, "our son." This made John feel uncomfortable. Michael was used to his current school and had his own friends. John didn't want someone to plan his son's life without considering the boy's feelings. Moreover, the phrase "our son" sounded jarring because Michael was still living with him. The woman, seeing John's hesitation, quickly explained that all decisions still depended on him. But in the end, John still took Michael and left. Warm sunlight filtered through the leaves, dappling the river's surface. As they were crossing a bridge, the father and son stopped. Watching the cars continuously moving into the distance, John tentatively asked his son, "These cars will take people to different places. Do you want to go to a new place to live?" But Michael answered without any hesitation, "I only like our house." Just that simple sentence brought tears to John's eyes. How could he not want to be with his son forever? But his body now would not allow it. When he went to the adoption center again, the staff there suggested he should make a memory box to leave precious memories for his son. Later, when he grows up, Michael will remember the father who defied everything for him. However, John didn't want his son to understand death so soon. He even hoped the boy would forget about being adopted, not needing to know about his biological parents' helplessness. His mother had left early, and his father was leaving because of cancer. Seeing John say this, the staff member didn't feel it was appropriate to say more. John cherished these last few days immensely. He tirelessly told stories to his son over and over again, lay with his son on the park grass basking in the warm sun, took him up close to watch an excavator swing its giant arm. They drew simple pictures together and taped them to the wall, chased each other on the lawn, ate ice cream together, carried him on his shoulders, and fell asleep together on the living room sofa. When he saw a loving father dressing his son, John's heart swelled with envy. He knew that he would no longer have the chance to do those things in the future. One day while working, he saw that his client's house had all kinds of toy cars and a slide in the yard, but no one was playing with them. while his own son had never had those things. While cleaning the window of a shop, John saw a very beautiful toy dump truck. From then on, whenever he cleaned a car, Michael would sit next to him cleaning his little car. Seeing this scene, John smiled with satisfaction. A few days later, the father and son visited the second adoptive family. It was a middle-aged couple who looked very loving, and their voices were very gentle. They had adopted a 10-year-old daughter and now wanted to adopt another child. They had an adorable pet rabbit in their house, which showed that they were also animal lovers. The 10-year-old older sister was also very considerate and knew how to take care of others. Everything seemed perfect. However, there was one thing that John could not accept. The man had been bitten by a dog as a child and believed that dogs were very aggressive. His family was adamant about not having a dog, but having a dog was Michael's long-held dream. John considered that the man would not change his mind for a child. John wanted to hear his son's opinion. He asked if he wanted a rabbit. "I want a puppy." Seeing his son's face gazing intently out the window, John's heart already had the answer. Regarding how to make his 3-year-old son understand death, John had always been struggling to find a suitable way to put it. While helping his old landlady, Mrs. Rosemary, John asked her this question. The old woman's words moved him deeply. She said that after people die, they don't simply turn to dust and return to dust, but they become spirits and energy that exist in the air, continuing to accompany the ones they love. When I was young, I used to scoff at these words. It's not until now that I realize my mother was right, because I can often feel her coming back to sit by my bed and talk to me. That day while playing in the park, Michael found a beetle that wasn't moving. The boy asked John, "What's wrong with it, Dad?" He wanted to make the beetle move, but couldn't. Taking this opportunity, John explained the meaning of death to his son for the first time. Death is not just when the body can no longer move. It will not walk, not eat, and not play anymore. Everything from plants to animals will go from birth to old age and then death. After death, only a corpse remains. Just like this beetle, its body is no longer here. Michael innocently asked, "Is it sad, Dad?" For a 3-year-old child, those complex explanations were not as appealing as the music from the ice cream truck nearby. As John's remaining time grew shorter, his pains also came more frequently. He had to shut his eyes tightly to try and compose himself. However, his boss misunderstood and thought he was dozing off to skip work. He not only deducted his wages, but also told him not to come to work anymore. He even mocked John for being just a poor window cleaner. John quietly took the money and went to the hospital to buy medicine. Watching other patients struggling with illness, John sat alone and thought. The pressure from his illness and caring for his son had taught him patience. But what was there left to endure for a man who was about to die? Taking advantage of his boss's absence, John brought a box of eggs to the man's front yard. He not only threw an egg at each clean window pane, but even the man's shiny car did not escape. Every time he saw children with their parents, John's eyes would light up with envy. How he wished he could be with his son forever. If his wife hadn't left, if he hadn't gotten sick, how happy life would be now. As the pain came more frequently, Michael, an understanding child, also noticed his father's abnormality. The boy began to try to take care of his father, standing on a chair to pour his father a glass of water and carefully placing it on the coffee table. Michael climbed onto the sofa, leaned against his father, and placed his small hand on his father's large one. It was the greatest comfort the boy could think of. The father and son quietly enjoyed these precious moments. The third adoptive family was a large family. The couple raised 6 to 7 children together, both biological and adopted. The couple emphasized to John that they would treat all their children fairly and promised that Michael would be their last adopted child. With so many children, the house was always lively. On the sofa, there was even a dog that Michael had always dreamed of. However, having too many children made them easily distracted. Sometimes the whole house became chaotic, and even a child of the same age was eyeing Michael's dinosaur toy. The frightened boy hurriedly put his toy away. Considering that the parents' love might be divided among too many children, John gave up on this family. At this moment, there was still a bit of selfishness in John's heart. His only dream was for his son to receive complete love. After rejecting 3 families in a row, John went to the adoption center again. He hoped to hand Michael over to the boy's biological mother. But this idea was flatly rejected because a woman who had once abandoned her child was highly likely to do it again. The staff member said, "I know you want to find the best for your son, but your situation is too special. We have tried our best." Actually, John was not being overly picky. He continuously rejected 3 families because he could tell just by a glance whether that family was suitable for his son or not. The staff member helplessly reminded him that he should make a decision soon because his time was really running out. It was true, his illness was getting worse, and John was vomiting more and more. In the indifferent flow of time, John celebrated his 34th birthday. He took Michael to the supermarket to buy ingredients to make a cake. There, they met a pregnant woman. When she learned that the father was making the cake himself, she praised Michael for being a lucky child. Hearing this, John's heart was filled with mixed emotions. Upon returning home, John made a rather plain-looking cake by himself. His son placed 34 red candles on it for him, because the color red symbolizes warmth, hope, and strong vitality. An unintentional remark from Michael stunned John. "Dad, you're old." Just that one sentence, and tears suddenly streamed down John's face. He knew this was his last birthday. Just as he was about to open his mouth to say that he was dying, Michael took out the 35th candle and handed it to him. The boy hoped to continue celebrating his 35th birthday with his dad next year. John fought back his tears, took the candle, and said nothing, just trying to force a smile for his son. He still didn't want Michael to understand the meaning of death. Looking at the busy traffic under the bridge heading into the distance, John knew he had to quickly find an adoptive family for his son. Not long after, they visited the fourth adoptive family, who was a divorced woman. At 16, she had an unplanned pregnancy, and the child she gave birth to was given away by her parents. Since then, she had no news of her child. After getting married, because she couldn't have children, her husband chose to divorce her as he didn't want to adopt. She hoped to adopt a child to make up for the shortcoming with her child from long ago. Normally, adoption requires both husband and wife. As a single woman, she knew her conditions were not good, but she still tried to apply for adoption 3 years ago. The woman treated them very casually, but also very sincerely. She not only knelt down to talk to Michael, but also took out a large bag of candy to fill the boy's toy car. Throughout the process, Michael was extremely comfortable, as if he were in his own home. John's face also showed a satisfied smile. Looking at this approachable woman, Michael didn't hide his thoughts either. "When will you die?" That sentence stunned everyone. No one expected such a young boy to already understand the meaning of death. It was just that the boy was too understanding to show it to his dad. This understanding made John feel extremely guilty. It was all because of him that Michael had to endure things he shouldn't have at his age. John was quite satisfied with this single woman, but he didn't make a decision immediately because he knew how difficult it was for a single woman to raise a child. On the way back, he saw a child crossing the road alone on a deserted street. John wondered if his son would be like that in the future. That lost and helpless figure looked so pitiful. As the wind stirred the green leaves, John, with a heavy heart, sought out Mrs. Rosemary again. He didn't know if bringing Michael into this world was right or wrong, and he couldn't face having to give his son to someone else. Mrs. Rosemary patiently comforted him, saying that what he was doing now was very brave. Even if death really comes one day, he can go with pride and without any shame. Death is not the end of a person's life, but a way to continue existing in another form. The old woman also comforted John. "If it weren't for my old age, I would really hope to adopt Michael." Didn't John wish for that as well? As his illness worsened, John even found it difficult to climb stairs and couldn't complete the basic work of window cleaning. He spent most of his time curled up on the sofa to rest. Every time he saw his father in pain, Michael, an understanding child, would quietly cover him with a blanket. Waking with a start, John couldn't help but hug his son. He often thought, if only time could stop at this moment forever. Next, they visited the fifth adoptive family. This was a well-off couple. They were able to have children, but didn't want pregnancy and childbirth to reduce their quality of life. So they wanted to skip that important step and adopt directly. Throughout the meeting, the woman spoke very articulately, while the man just echoed her. Their attitude was as if to say, "We are adopting your son. It's a blessing your family has earned for 8 generations." They were adopting a child not out of love, but seemingly just to decorate their empty house. To show off their ability to adopt, the man even specifically took John to tour their room. Seeing Michael playing happily downstairs, John's heart began to waver. This family was not only wealthy, but also had no other children to compete for the parents' love with Michael. However, that fleeting thought quickly vanished as he was admiring a model train the man had made himself. John said that Michael liked trucks and would probably like this too, but the man said to let him get a little older first. The meaning behind his words was very clear. Compared to the child, he preferred his model more. The smile on John's face gradually faded. At parting, their behavior became even more outrageous. Michael liked a doll and wanted to take it home. Perhaps noticing John's dissatisfaction, the woman signaled her husband to ask for the doll back. With no other choice, Michael had to obediently return it. Faced with such a selfish couple, John was truly angry. He went to the adoption center staff and questioned why they found such strange families. But the staff only explained that they had tried their best, and all procedures had to follow regulations. For the sake of John and his son, she had already broken the rules many times. John wanted to try to find a few more families to have the best choice for his son. But how could such a decision be so easy? After visiting many families, little Michael seemed to have understood something. On the road, the boy suddenly asked John, "What is adoption?" John was about to refuse to answer, but then he realized that Michael would eventually have to face this. He explained delicately, "Adoption is when a child cannot be cared for by their parents, so they go to live with two new, wonderful parents. They will give the child a new, warm home." However, after hearing this, Michael said seriously, "I don't want to be adopted." With that, he ran off, walking balanced on a white line painted on the ground, as if walking on a single log bridge. To understand the issue from his son's perspective, John also followed Michael, walking on the white line, but due to his illness, he couldn't keep his balance. He staggered after less than 2 steps. Helpless, John angrily kicked his car hard to vent. God didn't give him time to be with his son, not even allowing him to understand his son's thoughts. Overwhelmed by emotion, the pain struck again. John could only bend over, gasping for breath. Even pouring juice required him to use 2 hands to keep his body from shaking. Seeing that, Michael seemed to realize something. The father who used to carry him on his shoulders had now become much older and weaker. To help his son integrate easily into the new family, John bought a brand new set of pajamas for Michael, wanting him to change out of the old ones he was wearing. But Michael stubbornly refused. This time, John did not indulge his son's stubbornness, but made him think carefully in his room. The father and son began a cold war. John sat outside the door, writing in a notebook, while Michael lay on the floor with his legs crossed like an adult. Who knows what was going on in that little head? A short while later, Michael angrily threw the new pajamas out of the room. The toy truck he loved most was also thrown out. Seeing this, John was not angry at all. On the contrary, he gave a smile that was both helpless and satisfied. He knew that even though his son didn't want to accept new things, at least the boy had the courage to express his feelings. On the lush green hill, heavy white clouds drifted lazily. John sat alone on the grass, thinking. It was time to make a decision about the adoptive family for his son. After making his decision, he drove to the cemetery. This was the place where he would live forever. John just gave a bitter smile and drove away. At this point, he could face everything calmly. It was time to say goodbye to everything around him. John sold the car that had been with him for so many years. He even handed over the information of all his clients to his colleague. Watching the familiar car gradually disappear into the distance, John's eyes were filled with reluctance. After settling everything, John took his son to the amusement park. The father and son played bumper cars together, watched cotton candy being made, rode the mini pirate ship, fished for yellow ducks in the water, and entered the world of the magic mirror together. John turned into a dwarf, while Michael became a giant. That reflection was a future that John could not experience with his son. This was the last time he would bring his son to the amusement park. Seeing the radiant smile on his son's face, John's heart was once again filled with indescribable emotions. That evening, John suddenly realized that if he didn't say these words right now, there might not be another chance. He finally summoned all his courage to talk to his son about the meaning of death and the truth that he was about to leave. He said, "Just like the beetle left its body, soon Dad will also leave this body. If you miss me, just talk to the sky. I will hear you. Although you won't be able to hear me speak like you do now, you can feel it in your heart because I will always be with you in the air around you. I will become the warm sunlight that shines on you, the raindrops that kiss your cheeks, the taste of grapes that lingers in your heart." He followed the advice from the adoption center about the memory box. He wrote 15 letters, one for each year, to accompany his son until he turned 18. He also put his photos in it, along with the red candle that symbolized hope. The only photo of his mother holding Michael as a baby was placed in the glove his wife had left behind, and then everything was put into the memory box. He only hoped his son would not hate his mother. The photos of the father and son taken at the amusement park, the hat he wore most often, and the window cleaning kit that had been with him for so many years were also put in the box. It was the best gift he could leave for his son, and also the final love a father could give to his son. After finishing everything, John suddenly felt a sense of relief. It seemed he had a premonition that something was about to happen. The next day, Michael woke up very early. The morning street was quiet. John took Michael across the street for the last time. Then they got on a bus to the adoptive family's home. On the way, the sky outside the window was covered with thick, dark clouds. But when they arrived, the sunlight spread out a path of happiness before them. John let Michael step up and ring the doorbell. When the door opened, John broke into a radiant smile. The person who opened the door was the single woman. She greeted John first. then slowly knelt down to look directly at Michael. "Hello, Michael. I'm so happy to see you again." Michael said nothing, just looked up at his dad. John also smiled at his son, his large hand holding the small one. The camera finally rested on Michael's face. The determined look in the boy's eyes seemed to say, "Don't worry, Dad, I will live well here." Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching. What do you think of this film?